Well, hey there, Big Easy Cruisers. Your Big Easy Cruise host, Jason Venner here. And first and foremost, it's great to touch base in this fashion. Secondly, I found some time with the big man himself, our executive producer and the president of Star Vista Live, Mr. Mike Jason. Mike, thanks for taking some time with us today.
Thanks, Jason.
I mean, first and foremost, we just came off a phenomenal 2026 experience. Tell us a little bit about your kind of view of how 2026 went. What did you get? What you expected? Was that cruise everything you hoped it would be and more?
Yeah, it was really fantastic cruise. It's a third year, and you can feel the community coming together, and that's the most important thing. There's elements of music, there's elements of community, there's elements of the guests creating that community. It becomes their cruise at some point, and that's always what we look for. And so I was really pleased this year that we continue to make progress on that. Lots of things that we can tweak and change, and I love feedback. It helps us, kind of keep on the right direction and maybe tweak the direction a little bit as well. But yeah, I was just really, really pleased. It was great.
I couldn't echo that more. You really you used a great phrasing in there in terms of the community, and I think that's something that we find on all our cruises is the cruise is just a cruise until the community starts to settle and become something that is more than just the music. And it takes a couple of years to kind of start that process of that gelling. And I'm really glad you're starting to see it because I'm starting to see it from my angle as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the cruises that we do, well, we kind of help nurture and create the community. With this Big Easy cruise, it's interesting. The community's there. And it's just a question of kind of tapping in and working with our partners, WWOZ and the Jazz and Heritage Foundation, and of course the chef and Frenchie and the artists themselves. But there's something there, and so that's the great part is tapping into that and not having so much to create or nurture it. And that's really what's happening here.
You know, I think a big part of that, and something that I pay compliment to frequently with Star Vista Live, is Star Vista Live listens. It's a big, I think it's a center point for the company, is you're producing these musical experiences for a broad range of guests. There's 9 different experiences, and each one has its own feel. And you've really perfected a culture. Perfected is a strong term for obviously anything, but you've nurtured and created such a culture internally with Star Vista Live where we listen to the guests. And really, I wanted to kind of touch on that today because I know we put out, hey, do you have any questions for us? Type of an ask me anything. And we got a lot of questions from the guests. So really, that's kind of the point of this conversation, but also leads into your point about, creating that community is the ability for someone like you to jump on with me for, 10 minutes and answer some questions. That means a lot. And why do you think that's so important from your end of creating these experiences?
Well, we're never so, self-centered and arrogant to think that we have the answer for you as a guest. What we do is we provide the environment, we work really hard at it, but a lot of feedback is really interesting. And even if we don't always agree, there's maybe some element of the input that we get that really means something to us. And so we're happy to change it. Obviously, some things can't be changed, but if it can be changed and enough people want it to be changed, or we can test it and see if it works. So, and that's fun, to be honest with you. It's really fun to
Yeah.
talk to people and hear their views and their incredible passion. We get millions of suggestions as to which artists we should we should secure, and but we like that. That's fine. We don't mind. It's not always possible, but so it is fun, and I do learn a lot. So to me, it's a great conversation, and I never mind it ever.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump into a couple of these that we received, and I think question number one is probably the most common question we get with running a Big Easy cruise, a New Orleans-based cruise, and it is really simply to New Orleans or not to New Orleans for the
Yeah,
itinerary.
that is really the question. And I'll give you a little bit of background, not to belabor it, but when we first came up with this idea, it was Holland America that suggested we go to New Orleans. I didn't know that they hadn't gone there in many, many years, and they said, "Well, we can do it. It's not a problem." And so we decided to go, and it was a lot of fun. The 24 hours is a great experience. The ability to go to Tipitina's and bring the entire ship there. The second day, where you kind of can do whatever you want and go visit the city, it was really important part of it. We found people have two views on this, and they're diametrically opposed. There are people that love going to New Orleans, and it's the most important thing for them in many ways. And then there's an equal number of people that say, well, I'm kind of from that area and I go there a lot, so I'd really like a warm or warm winter vacation and to take me out of the cold. And so we are kind of split down the middle, and we've come up with this every other year. I don't know that there's a hard and fast rule, but that seemed to be the way we're approaching it at this point. The second issue is we had November the first year, and it was lovely. The weather was lovely. Now in January, New Orleans got snow a couple of times. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
the last thing I want to do is take you on a winter vacation into the snow. So I see it both ways. And honestly, we don't have a view one way or the other. It's whatever the guests enjoy, but it seems like they're evenly split, which seems like maybe we do it every other year and we hold our breath for the weather. But
Yeah.
that's the simplest answer that you can give, and what we're kind of faced with.
Well, and something I would add in there too a little bit is I think when you're planning out an itinerary, and please, if you don't mind talking about it briefly, when you have New Orleans in there, you have to factor in the river up and the river out, and that changes dramatically where else we can get to. So to include New Orleans is a big change. It doesn't allow for a whole lot of other opportunities for itinerary.
Yeah, from an itinerary sense, it's pretty much New Orleans and then one Mexican port, Cozumel. And you do that probably year after year after year. You might be able to switch out something else, but it would be very limited. It takes a couple of days to get to New Orleans, go up the river. It's a fantastic
Oh, it's
experience. As
beautiful.
many times as you do it, it's really unique and interesting, but it does limit the itinerary. There are weather factors, and there are people that kind of feel like I'd like to go someplace warm. So,
Yeah.
again, I respect every view on this issue. I wish there was a clear answer, because if there was,
Yeah.
we'd do it. And there sometimes isn't.
Well, actually, you mentioned something right off the top that I'd like to kind of jump into because it leads into our second question. Holland America Line obviously has been a wonderful partner with Star Vista Live for years and years and years. Can you talk a little bit about ship selection, whether you want to talk about cruise line selection or ships within the line? Actually, let's make it more specific. Since we're with Holland America Line specifically, how do we choose what ships we're going to be on for the year?
Well, generally, we've done this class of ship, the New Amsterdam and the Eurodam. It is a great size. The main theater holds half the ship, so we can kind of make sure everyone gets a chance. So a lot of times we do 3 shows, and 2 at the pool, 1 in the main theater, 2 in the main theater, 1 in the pool with our headliners. And so, we like that size ship. And so whether it's Holland America or one of the other cruise lines that we use, we tend to go in that size of a ship. There's an intimate feeling. And so we look at that. The other issue is, where are the ships located? Lots of people have asked us, can you go out of the West Coast? And this
Mhm.
particular ship is not on the West Coast, so we would not be able to use. There are other reasons you wouldn't go out of the West Coast, but so the ships are deployed in certain areas a couple of years out. So the timing is also interesting. I am now looking at 28 itineraries and ships now, in order to
And to be
get.
clear, it's February of 2026, to be very
It
clear, in
is.
case someone's seeing this later down the line. Yeah.
By June of this year, I'll probably have selected, what ships, what time periods, and some rough idea of the agenda, because then we spend the next couple of months after that securing the artists. The
Mhm.
artists really want to know, what ship, where am I going, where is it being deployed out of? And so we work way, way out. So far, we've had great experience with Holland America. They've been a great partner. Frankly, the ships are getting a little old, they're aging. And so one of the things that we need to look at is whether there's a dry dock version of the ship that they're offering, whether
Yeah.
there's another ship that Holland America has, and where would it be, and whether that other ship fits with we try not to change from one line to another very often, just because it's disruptive to people who
It's a
want their rooms and
huge,
their
huge
cabins,
change.
and just working with the ship, and all the performances change. And so, but again, we're working 2 years out. We are locked into 27. Looking forward to it. But in 28, I think, we're going to take a good hard look at everything and just see what works the best for this experience.
Not to put you on the spot, and you're welcome to dodge this one, but a lot of our frequent cruisers also are Holland America Line cruisers, and they know there's a pinnacle class out there. They know there's the Koningsdam, New Statendam, Rotterdam, etc. Have we looked at those ships at all? And what's your opinion on the slightly larger ships?
I never duck a question. I'm happy to have it. I sailed the Koningsdam in September of this year. Spent 10 days on it and
Yeah,
really got a feel for it. It's a lovely ship. It's just a beautiful ship. It has an aft pool. It has a midship pool that's much higher in terms of,
three
so
levels, isn't it?
yeah,
Three
three
decks. Yeah,
levels. So you can cover the pool and still the sound is great. It has great secondary and tertiary, venues. The trick is the main theater is smaller, and so
yeah,
it does not hold half the ship. And so we would have to change the programming, and we would have to, do more pool emphasis, which can be done and might be the right answer. But it's a lovely ship. I would kind
it
of
is.
go there in a minute if everything else fell in line. It is bigger, and so you want to make sure you have enough guests so that any artist isn't playing to, plays to a full house, so to speak. But
Yeah,
it's a lovely ship, and to me, it's absolutely something we would look at going forward.
fantastic. Okay, let's jump into the next one. This is obviously a hot button topic for us internally a lot, but guests are noticing it and want to talk about it too, because we do have sandy beaches and our Big Easy cruise next to each other. A lot of guests do see the aft stage versus the midship stage. Can we talk a little bit about the Lido deck, which is deck 9 for anyone that's unfamiliar? Meaning we have the midship covered pool stage, and then we have the aft stage. Talk a little bit about the decision to run one versus the other, and why we don't stay down the middle.
Yeah, this is a great example of us listening to the guests when we stepped in on Sandy Beaches, which is the only cruise that we've ever kind of stepped in on. We knew Delbert and Clinton really well, and we wanted to kind of do the heavy lifting and let him be an artist. And we love the music, love the direction he was going in. So, long story short, we jumped in, and our idea was like, well, what's about this aft deck with the, all the stagings on the aft deck, and we always do in the midship. Let's move it over. And we got feedback that they didn't want that at all. They
At
were
all.
really committed to the
It was an
aft deck.
adamant, yeah, there was no
They were,
question. This
that's
was not
probably
a discussion.
understating it to say
Yeah,
how adamant they were. And so I just said, okay, let's just keep it the way it is, and maybe we should rethink things. And it is fantastic. The aft deck is more wide open. Has better sight lines. I think it has maybe a little more capacity. It's less cluttered. The stage
mhm,
is bigger and more impressive. And so we have kind of come around to, all things being equal, maybe the aft deck is better for shows than the midship deck is, which has the constraint of, if you cover it, it's the sound bounces off the ceiling. It is a little tighter in some ways. So I think we'll keep Sandy Beaches for sure on the aft deck, and it's quite possible we'll move Big Easy to the aft deck. I'm not saying that as an announcement right now, because it does require some thought process and
there's a
some
lot of
changes.
logistics.
Yeah, a lot of logistics, but I really like the aft deck, and I think I stand corrected in that. Now the difficulty is if you go on long itineraries, the wind and the weather affect the aft deck more than the midship deck.
Yeah,
So Sandy Beaches has always made peace with the fact that it could be disruptive, or you wouldn't go as far. So, for example, if you went to Aruba and Curacao and you made it a high-speed run, it would be difficult to have the aft deck. But on a beautiful day where you're cruising slowly and the weather is good, is nothing better than the aft deck. So it's going to stay on Sandy Beaches, and we may very well bring it on Big Easy. And we may do something in the midship deck, not covering the pool, but have a secondary smaller stage there so that we could bounce back and forth. One thing I always wanted to do is be able to continuously give people music. So you'd have the aft deck, and that would end, and then you go to the midship deck, and then you have a constant, performance there. The reason you can't do it in one place, obviously, is you have to reset the stage plot and get ready for the next set of artists, and there's sound checks and line checks and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think we've decided what to do. Sandy Beaches and Big Easy will probably follow suit, but you never say never.
yeah. And I think that's not just diplomatic. I think that's also the fairest answer, to be quite honest, is, because on a lot of our cruises, we do midship. The 2 cruises we do in the fall, we use the midship stage. The 2 cruises following Sandy Beaches and Big Easy, we do the midship stage, Country and Soul Train. So it's not as simple as just moving one ship or one cruise's stage, because then you got to think about the cruise after it, and you have to pay the price somewhere in some moving of stages and in logistics as well. So I appreciate you talking about that.
Yeah, not to get too deep into the weeds though, but mechanically it's difficult.
Yeah.
You are taking the water out of the aft
Yeah.
deck pool, you are covering the pool, and then you are building the stage. And then if you decide the next week to go to the midship, you then put the water back in the pool, you take the cover off the aft deck, you drain the midship pool and you cover that. And so you almost need, 2 sets of,
Yeah.
pool coverings and two
Yeah.
2 sets of every, and we do that. We're happy to do that if that's the answer, but it is easier to do them together. That is not the reason to do it though. The reason would be it's a better experience.
Absolutely. But something you touched on too, and again, not to get too into the weeds, but there are biological concerns. You can't drain the pool unless you're in specific areas of the ocean. If you're
Yeah.
within a proximity to an island, there are so many logistics that go into it. It's really more than just, drain and empty, fill and empty the pool.
Nothing on
Uh,
the ship is arbitrarily decided. Everything is put in writing and requested and then reviewed, and every kind of change on the ship itself has to go through, the ship staff captain and the logistics people and the safety
Yeah.
people. So anyway, the
Back to corporate office, then back to us.
back to, yeah. And they're
Well,
usually generally very good about it, but it is
Yeah.
paperwork.
Absolutely. More steps always. Since we're talking about midship stage and aft stage, if we stick with the Lido midship stage, which it seems like we are for now, and again, speaking specifically to Big Easy, one of the main questions we got, or a specific question we got multiple times, was, can dancing be restricted to the sides? Because the stage is relatively lower, when people dance in the middle, it's sometimes hard for folks to see. Any thought process into that?
Yeah, we always look at their ability to dance and cutting off sight lines, and that's why I say the midship is a little cluttered. There's lots of room, but there's kind of room in the back. So yeah, I think we can take a look at that and try and restrict dancing to. We want to provide it because it's a very big part of people's
Yeah.
reaction to the music.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I think we'll take a look at that, and maybe we can change some of the way we allow dancing and do that. But again, maybe going to the aft deck solves that problem too.
Yeah, amen. Before we jump into the actual running of the cruise itself, there's one more question, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. It's, have you considered running a West Coast version? For a couple commentators or a couple commenters, there are other cruises that run out of the West Coast. Is it purely down to deployment of the cruise ships?
It's always been deployment up until this point, because the class of ship that we use is not available on the West Coast often, if ever. And so you have the problem of that ship has to be kind of sent there by Holland America. And if it's not there, it'd be usually expensive to get it there. They'd have to go there for a week and then come back someplace else. And they don't want to do that. They come out of Florida, and that's the deployment on it. The other issue too is that I like the West Coast, but it is, kind of down to Mexico and back. It's actually calm, it's a very pleasant experience, but you don't have the variety of places that you can go, that you can do in the Caribbean. Now, lots of our guests, I think, have probably been everywhere, but optically, and for many guests, it is nice to go to St. Martin one year and Puerto Rico the next, and Aruba something the third year. So we try and mix it up so we don't go to the same places. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to, just because of artist considerations. But so if we change and go to a different ship, the Koningsdam, for instance, or the Rotterdam, they are deployed, I think, on the West Coast, and that's probably one of our competitors does that. They use the different ship.
Yeah.
So once we get over the hump of being able to take the experience and move it onto the bigger ship, and figure out how to use all the venues, then it opens it up to other places, because the deployment would be different. So that would be the issue. The other problem too is that we do 3-4 cruises in a row, so I have to move them all to the West Coast. You really can't do 2 weeks in Florida, then a week in California, and then back to Florida. We load all the equipment, the staging, the lights, the back line, everything all at once. We have all of our staff pre-cruises, and it stays on for parts of the 4 weeks. And so that would be a little tricky too. But again, I
Yep.
think I'm not averse to it. It's just figuring out how to do it the right way.
Sounds like it's time to do a standalone in the fall, Mike, is what I
Yeah,
hear people saying.
you could do that.
All right, let's talk about the experience itself a little bit. We've talked about the ships, we've talked about deployment and some of those choices and the infrastructure. Let's talk about the actual fun part, the actual booking of the talent, the actual cruise itself. Can you talk a little bit about the balance of blues artists that you aim for, how we kind of choose lineups in Big Easy?
Yeah, it's Louisiana, New Orleans, the area music is made up of a melange of different styles. So you have blues and you have Zydeco and Cajun, and you have, straight ahead jazz, and you have,
Jazz, yeah.
and so, we want a mixture of those things, which are, world-class performers, but also in the different areas. Blues is an area I think that we could expand a little bit in. We could add some blues artists. I think that lends itself to that. And so, yeah, much like Jazz Fest has different tents, we
Yeah.
have kind of created kind of virtual tents on board where you can go into a room and see something. The Ocean Bar will have a quieter, more laid back feel, and the main theater maybe a little bit more rock in the pools, a little bit more up tempo, and so we're trying to get a mixture of it. But I do take the blues, which is a really important part of the New Orleans music scene, and I think it could be expanded a bit, and we will definitely take a look at that. We also
I,
kind of parallel ourselves a little bit on Jazz Fest. It's
yeah.
kind of a jazz fest at sea. And so you will see kind of a southern leaning rock, if for a better term. And you will definitely see artists like that, the Little Feat and different
Yeah.
artists. And that I think is kind of parallels what Jazz Fest does, which is trying to broaden the appeal and bring in some other artists. They probably go further than I would go. There's some artists that don't feel like they have anything to do with Southern American music and roots music and New Orleans at all. And so we probably wouldn't go as far as they go, but we do try and introduce people to some other artists that are adjacent, and have played at Jazz Fest too. That's a big factor. So
I think a great example is the use of John Boutte on the 2026 experience versus the previous two experiences. I mean, he's obviously vocally, I mean, he's unparalleled in so many ways. And we've always used him in smaller rooms because it just kind of felt right. This last year, you put him in the main theater. And I think that's a great example of kind of you throw things. It's not that we're throwing things at the wall. I don't mean to cheapen it, but you kind of include what you include and just see what hits to a certain extent. And John Boutte is an example of he filled the main theater, as a matinee style show. And I think that's a great example of exactly what you're saying. The blues does have a space, the jazz does have a space, everything kind of, and then you get to just kind of pick and choose and see what really suits the cruise itself. Boutte being a great example.
yeah, that happens, quite often, that we see an artist that just
Yeah.
reacts incredibly, and we'll go, John Boutte for forever, and so we knew he was going to be
Oh,
great,
he's a
but
monster. He's a monster.
monster.
Yeah.
But I think the level of enthusiasm and the number of people that wanted to see him, and we thought, wow, we are losing lots of people by going in too
Yeah.
small of a room. And the Ocean Bar, like I say, is kind of a nice vibe, quiet. It's a little bit more laid back. But putting him in the main theater, I thought was almost a no-brainer. And then I was unbelievably pleased that had the reaction. So
Yeah.
we will see that, during the day. It's also kind of fun to use the main theater during the day.
Mhm.
And so that would be one of those examples where we can squeeze a little bit more music into the week. We never seem to reduce the number of artists and performances.
No.
We just look for new places to put them.
Another question we got here is, and this is probably someone who's done Sandy Beaches into Big Easy. Could the artists be encouraged to bring more merchandise, especially T-shirts? We love them. We want to represent them and support them. Many requests for this one, Mike.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. In the past, we have the art. First of all, we don't make any money on merch at all. It's all for the artist. 100% of it, whatever the ship takes, they take, but the rest goes to the artist. So for us, you could have an infinite number of things. On Sandy Beaches, we set up
Merch World.
which is huge and has probably a half a dozen of our people working in there. And that's a legacy of what they used to do. We're certainly willing to do that. One of the difficulties is the artists have to kind of bring everything on or have it shipped on. And with merch, it's always size issues. It's small, medium, large, extra large, whatever. And you're guessing at what people want. You have some things that are breakable vinyl that comes on, and so we've proven it could be done on sandy beaches, and we're certainly happy to do it more on Big Easy because people do like the ability to shop and get something from their favorite artist. So I think we can expand it, and we're not against that. But it is tough because the artists have to truck it all on unless they have it shipped ahead of time, which sometimes they don't have
Some
time
do.
to do. And then they have to count it in and count it out, and we have to settle up. And so it's really a burden on them if they don't have a merch person. It's sometimes a little tricky. Sandy Beach has had a legacy of doing that, and so all the
Yeah.
artists were but the artists love merch revenue, even though our fees dwarf merch revenue by a factor of hundreds.
Yeah.
They do love merch money. It's separate money, I guess. They look at
Yeah.
it. So
Actually, playing right off of that, we loved the poster this year. Thank you for doing it. Is there a world where we can make it a smaller version? None of us could fit it in our bags, and I feel like we had to leave some of them behind.
yeah, every world should include a smaller poster.
Yeah.
I think we let our enthusiasm get away from us a bit on that, and it's just sometimes you drop the ball in terms of the size, and I think we dropped the ball in terms of the size. And so if you got it home, it's a great keepsake. But
It's
even
a great
on my
piece.
walls, all full here of things, so I'm not sure I have that much room myself personally for it, but definitely we would never do something that large again. It was kind of a let's call it an anomaly rather than a mistake, but
Yeah.
it was a
I mean,
mistake. So
the intention was correct. The poster was correct. We just got a little grand with
yeah,
it.
we got a look around with it. Yeah.
Following up directly from that, would you guys be willing to, or could you consider doing poster signing sessions? Some of the other cruises out there do sessions where all the artists sit around once or twice a week and everyone gets to go through and get their poster signed as the ultimate keepsake of the week.
Yeah, we used to do this often on our cruises,
Uh-huh.
and that's just kind of a legacy of COVID. One of the issues were that we didn't want to put the artists and the guests too close together, particularly earlier in the week. And then the artist, would get sick and then couldn't do the performance. And so there's a few things that we lost. We lost autograph sessions, we lost step in and step out photos, and the artists have gotten away from them. But certainly we can do a poster signing. And I don't know whether you could get all the artists at the same time. There's so much going on with,
Yeah.
80, 90, 100 performances in a week and sound checks and the interactive events that artists do. It's kind of hard to get all the artists at a certain time to sit around the room. And also the logistics of getting, 1,800 people flowing through. And then you have the issue of like, you have to cap the line because the artist has to go to the next thing. But then if you're behind the line, so there's probably an answer there somewhere. And maybe it's a poster and, we have kind of pop-up events that happen after the artist performance, if they're willing to do it.
Uh-huh.
And we can, offer a half an hour, 45 minutes. So I'll make a note of that and, we'll take a look at it. But we did get away from it consciously after COVID, and that's probably receded now, but something to look at.
The last guest driven question I have, and this one's very specific. Have you thought or considered including dance lessons? We had some requests for Cajun two step, Cajun waltz, and things of that nature for the Big Easy cruise.
We haven't, but that's another question that is a
Yeah.
good one. We do this on a lot of our other cruises.
Uh-huh.
On country, we have, Texas two-step and line dancing, and it's done every day on the aft deck, I think. And so dance lessons
Soul
absolutely
Train
something.
has it. Malt Shop
Soul
has
Train
it.
has
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do. And it kind of organically grew. A couple of people started doing it, and then we thought,
Yeah.
well, okay, we'll hire somebody to kind of lead lessons, and became more formal. So absolutely, I think it's a great idea and easy
Yeah.
to do.
So obviously, those are we took the top 10 questions that we received from the AMA concept here, but there's always a million other questions we get. Are there any points for Big Easy Cruise or any of your experiences for that matter, but focusing on Big Easy because that's where we're at, that you'd like to bring up before we jump off?
I'm interested in, the timing of the shows always is a really interesting thing. So I'd love feedback for people, do we start too late? Do we go too late in the evening? Starting early in the morning is tough because artists' their
It is.
voices don't open up, and so a lot of people ask me, can I get them to 10 o'clock in the morning to not a lot of artists don't want to start singing at 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock is pushing it, and they're night owls to a large degree anyway. And so, but a little late in the evening and the jam sessions that we do and some of the
Yeah.
evening, I would love to have, people kind of give us some feedback as to how comfortable they are. And again, it doesn't mean that we have to vote on it, because if there's, 50, 60, 100 people that love something, we'll do it even if it's late at night and the rest of the people are asleep. But I would love timing of the shows, how we use the venues. The venues are always tough too, because some of them are small, and trying to fit the artist in the right venue is always just a trick. And we try and do it so some artists do 4 shows, and so we're moving the times around. But
Yeah.
that kind of feedback is great. I think I love having the chef on board. So
Yeah,
Chef
Chef Kev.
Kevin is great. But people's view on the dinner that we did. Now, if you were lucky enough to go to the chef dinner, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Really great experience. So there's other stuff that we can do. I think Chef did a uh,
Yeah.
cake tasting on
Take Me
country.
Away on the
Take
country
Me
cruise.
Away. That
Yeah.
was a fantastic idea.
It was phenomenal.
And so, and we're always interested in the interviews, how much people
Mhm.
enjoy the interviews, and, so a little more of that, a little less of that. There's other things we could do that are non-music oriented that are a lot of fun. We've done things like we've asked the artist, what's the first job they ever did that wasn't music oriented, and they would talk about crazy jobs they had in the past, or just different views on touring and tales from the road, so to speak. So
Yeah.
those are great. Any feedback on the experience is great, but any feedback on the timing of the shows, or what shows I'd like to see more of. The blues thing is interesting. And I think we will lean more into the New Orleans music as well, now that we see people really reacting to Cajun and Zydeco and some of the other genres. Are really, really well received. So, that will be kind of something we'll focus in on.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I know you have 100 other cruises to focus on. I really, truly appreciate you taking the time, not only for me, but obviously for our guests. It means the world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
To all our fans and friends out there, this is Jason, your cruise host, alongside Mike Jason, the president of Star Vista Live and executive producer of the Big Easy Cruise. Happy to tune in here, or happy to have you tune in, I should say, and listen to us chat away. We'll do this as frequently as the questions come in. So thanks again for your time, Mike, and for all of you watching, thanks for your time as well. Have a great day, everybody. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you back
everybody.
on board.
Appreciate it.